Thank you so much, Lori, and thank you so much for being here today. If ever there was a time when your voice is needed and your support is needed, it is now. As you know, President Obama on July 14th, or actually Secretary of State John Kerry, just announced we have a deal. And the deal was submitted to the United Nations for the international community to approve on Monday. At about the same time it was submitted to the U.S. Congress. And unfortunately that goes against the Corker-Cardin legislation or the Royce-Engel legislation in the House that said it would be submitted to the American legislatures to be able to read and approve. But we're not surprised because this isn't the first thing that President Obama has reneged on, or the first promise when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program. There is so much, we were told, anytime, anywhere inspections. There are no anytime, anywhere inspections. First, the International Atomic Energy Administration, the IAEA, has got to submit a petition to a committee on which the Islamic Republic of Iran sits, and then they have 24 days in which to decide whether or not they are going to let the IAEA in to inspect the site. Well, yeah, according to Ali Heinemann, I'm sorry, I have a soft voice. Ali Heinemann, who was a past director of the IAEA, 24 days is more than enough time to totally rid any site of any trace of nuclear activity. We are just absolutely floored. There's so much about this deal that is absolutely appalling. But one of the things that people don't really know about is the fact that on Annex 3, subsection 10, there are two clauses that say the international community, they call it now the E3+3, which is the same as the P5+1, which is, as you know, Russia, China, the United States, France, Germany, and Great Britain all have to help Iran to protect their nuclear sites against any kind of cyber attack. That means if Israel or the United States in the future finds that Iran is about to launch a nuclear missile, they cannot use non-military methods such as Stuxnet to try to prevent that. You know, I know the Israeli government is absolutely appalled about this. So the more we read, the more we feel betrayed. And the more we feel betrayed, the more I wish we still had Lieutenant Colonel Allen West in the United States Congress. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West is a hero. He served in Kuwait, he served in Iraq, and then he taught for a year. He taught history for a year, right, in a high school, and then felt compelled to go back to Afghanistan. He comes from a long, long line of military men who served our country with distinction. And he is the first Black American congressman in, what, over 100 years? Since Reconstruction. He was an amazing member of the 112th Congress. He has a wonderful policy group called the National Center for Policy Analysis. Even though he is not in the U.S. Congress, we are all honored to hear him from time to time as a special consultant to Fox News. And without further ado, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce you to Lieutenant Colonel.
It's a pleasure to be here with each and every one of you. It's always great to be with Sarah Stern, who is truly what I would say a woman of Sparta, a true warrior that is out there fighting for all the right causes for the United States and also for Israel, our best ally in the Middle East. What I'd like to do is take maybe about 20-25 minutes and give some thoughts and perspectives and insights about the Iran deal, and also what we see as the rise of a global Islamic jihadist movement and how we are failing to contend with that. And then I would like to be able to hear your questions, and I think it's better to hear what's on your mind and be able to respond to that, because of course this evening we're only going to get maybe about 5 to 6 minutes to speak, so that's why I was so thrilled that I could have this opportunity to be with you. And I want to thank Laurie for hosting us here. God bless you. This is just fantastic, and you humble and you honor me.
It's an honor.
Let's start off by talking about the reason why most of us here flew in from across the country, and that's the Iranian deal. What you have to do is put your mind into 1938, when Neville Chamberlain got off of the aircraft coming back from Munich, Germany, and he stood there and he waved a piece of paper that says, "I have a signed document from Herr Hitler saying that we will have peace in our time." It was not too long after that that Adolf Hitler, who had built an incredibly impeccable war machine because they were able to expand their economy, took over the incredible industrial area that was known as the Rhineland without firing one single shot. Many of the German generals thought he was crazy for attacking into the Rhineland, but once they realized that he was able to take it without firing a shot, they became emboldened. Then Adolf Hitler said, well, we have to go and protect other native-speaking German peoples who are living under other states and governments, and the world said nothing about it. It's very funny that you hear Vladimir Putin saying the exact same thing about Russian-speaking people in the Ukraine. But history is slowly repeating itself. And the next thing we knew, Adolf Hitler had launched an incredible operation called the Blitzkrieg. And when Adolf Hitler was asked about that document that he signed with Neville Chamberlain, Adolf Hitler replied, "It's just a piece of paper." So why, all these years later, were we going into an agreement with a country that since 1979, when they took 53 hostages, has been in a declared war against the United States of America? Why would we sit down at a table with a country that in 1983 has the blood of 234 American Marine sailors and soldiers on their hands because of Hezbollah and the Beirut barracks bombing, which Iran sponsored? As a matter of fact, some of the leadership of Iran today were part of the planning of that operation that killed those Marines. Why would we be sitting down at a table with a country like Iran, whose explosive force penetrators, this new style of improvised explosive device, is able to penetrate the up-armored Humvees and the other mechanized and armored vehicles, and has been maiming and killing our men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan for the past decade? Why would we be sitting down at a table with a country that today is holding 4 Americans hostage? Saeed Abedini, Amir Hekmati, Jason Resnian, and Robert Levinson, who, when I was a member of Congress, his family lived in the district that I represented. And we got no response from this administration about his securing him and what have you. I cannot explain that. But when you sit and look at what this administration has signed with Iran, this is what it means in a global perspective. Iran will immediately become an economic powerhouse. Why would we all of a sudden release hundreds of billions of dollars to the #1 state sponsor of terrorism? It is not going to go to the betterment of the people of Iran and their standard of living. It's going to go to Hamas, it's going to go to Hezbollah, it's going to go to the Houthis, it's going to go to every single organization that they can sponsor, to include the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and also the Quds forces. And some of those forces are operating in our hemisphere out of South America and through Central America. The other thing is this: why would we sit and open up new markets to a country that eventually we may even see Iranian oil here in the United States of America, at a time when this administration has a ban on the export of our oil and natural gas here in the United States of America? It is unconscionable. That is going to happen in the immediate term. In years 5 through 8, the UN arms embargo on conventional weapons for Iran in year 5 will be lifted. That means Iran can sell and receive conventional arms shipments. Basically, they're doing a lot of that anyhow, but now they will officially be able to sell and receive arms. One of the most important things we have to be concerned about is the new S-300 anti-aircraft system. Because if Iran gets the S-300 anti-aircraft system, it will make that country almost impenetrable to air attack. And Russia is chomping at the bit to sell them that system. That's a very, very grave concern for the aircraft, the pilots, being an Israeli or being an American. But year 8, the ballistic missile ban on Iran will be lifted. And there's only one reason why Iran wants to have intercontinental ballistic missiles. That is to attack Israel and eventually to attack the United States of America and hold the rest of the world hostage, to include the entire Middle Eastern region. In year 10, Iran will be able to go back to full spinning of all of the centrifuges that supposedly 2/3 have been shut down. But you also have to realize that during the time of these negotiations, Iran has enriched uranium by 20%. So they were already violating agreements under the UN resolution while they were sitting at the table with us. But come year 10, they can spend all the centrifuges that they want. And in year 15, Iran will be able to build new nuclear reactors. Now, initially we were told going into these negotiations that this was about ceasing Iran's nuclear program. But what has ended up is that in the near term, Iran becomes an economic power. In the midterm, Iran becomes a military power. In the long term, Iran becomes a nuclear power. All of this is within 15 years. I'm 54 years of age. I will see this as long as I continue to be healthy. I'll be 69. But think about your children and grandchildren. Thinking about the world that all of a sudden the ghost of Neville Chamberlain has created for them. That's why we have to stand up against this. Now, sadly, people in the United States Senate, Senator Corker, did not treat this agreement as a treaty. They treated it as a presidential agreement. So the threshold for the president is much lower. The threshold is much higher for those who want to oppose it. It will only take the president 34 senators to be able to get this to go through. Only 34. And I think all you have to do is sit down and look across the country at all of the Democrat senators in blue states that don't have to worry about any type of re-election. What do they got to lose? And that's why you saw the Wednesday after the announcement was made on Tuesday, who was sent to Capitol Hill? Vice President Joe Biden. It will take, in the House of Representatives, 291 votes to be able to stop this. That's a Herculean effort. That's a super majority. We tried to do a balanced budget amendment by a 2/3 majority when I was there and couldn't even get that to go through. This is a very grave time. We know that the European Union has already voted to accept this resolution. We know that the UN Security Council right across the way voted unanimously to endorse this. Why? Because the Europeans want open markets. This is all about economics for them. We are not thinking in the long term. And just the same as everyone turned a blind eye to Adolf Hitler and what he was doing and growing the German economy, they didn't realize what he was growing the German economy to do. It was not about improving the standard of living for the German citizen, although you could say he brought in the Autobahn and all of these things. That Autobahn system was so that they can use those armored mechanized forces to quickly deploy. Now let's switch and talk about something else that is even more threatening. You saw recently at the testimony for General Dunford to be the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which I thoroughly support. It will be very interesting to see how General Dunford reacts the first time he has to sit in an Oval Office meeting with Valerie Jarrett. I think he will tell her who the real general is. He is a Marine. He is a combat infantryman. I know him very well. But General Dunford laid it out. Russia, China, Iran, and Islamic terrorism. The problem in the United States of America is that we are going out picking groups. We're not looking at an entire movement. When you talk about a war on terror, that's a horrible misnomer because terror is a tactic. A country cannot fight against a tactic. It would be just the same as saying that we fought against the kamikaze or we fought against the blitzkrieg in World War II. Or saying that we went to war against the 12th German Panzer Division and the 55th Japanese Infantry Division. A nation has to fight against a movement, an ideology. And recently in the Pentagon, when the president stood up and said that you cannot defeat an ideology with bullets, you can only do it with better ideas. That ain't how we beat the Nazis. That's not how we beat fascism. That's not how we beat Japanese imperialism. But the point is that we're not paying attention to these insidious words that are being said. but the enemy is. I graduated from the University of Tennessee. I remember going through Chattanooga, I can't tell you how many times, because my home was Atlanta, Georgia. The fact that we had an Islamic terrorist attack in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that killed 4 Marines and a U.S. Navy sailor, that's unconscionable. It's beyond belief. You know, most people say, okay, it's going to happen in New York, may happen in Washington, D.C., but Chattanooga, Tennessee, this shows you how emboldened the non-state, non-uniform belligerents that we must refer to as Islamic totalitarianism, Islamic fascism, Islamism, whatever, but it's the ideology that we have to fight against. And they only understand 2 things, that's strength and might. And when we are sitting around playing the kabuki dance, trying to figure out, well, was this young man in Chattanooga, was he suffering from depression? I mean, was he having a bad day? Did he have a bad date with his girlfriend? All that does is embolden the enemy to say, you know, they just don't get it. Just the same as during the Clinton administration, when we had the attack against Khobar Towers, when we had the attack against the USS Cole, we had the attacks against the embassies, and they still did not want to admit who the enemy was. So guess what they decided? We're going to take the fight right here to the heart of the United States of America. And 9/11 happened. See, if we don't confront and identify who this enemy is, and if any of you have ever read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, you will understand how important it is to identify your enemy, to understand and know your capability and capacities if you're going to be successful on the battlefield. We're not successful on this battlefield. ISIS itself holds 2/3 of territory in Syria, 1/3 of territory in Iraq. But it's not just ISIS. I was trying to write them all down, and let's see if I've got them right. Boko Haram, oh, and I forgot this other. Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, Ansar al-Sharia, ISIS, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, Jamaat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the Taliban, Jamaat al-Islamiyah, Jaiba al-Talib, Haqqani Network, Abu Sayyaf. That spans from Africa all the way over to the Philippines. This is a non-state, non-uniform belligerent enemy that is a greater threat because they don't openly carry their weapons, they don't believe in borders and boundaries, and for us to have an unsecure southern border is beyond belief in the time of this 21st century battlefield. But how are they seeing us? What are we doing? When we stand up and we say that we're going to cut 40,000 active duty soldiers from the United States Army, which means, ladies and gentlemen, that the Army that I love so very dearly, the Army that my father fought in World War II, is at pre-World War II levels now. The United States Marine Corps, the Marine Corps, my brother was an infantryman, and this gentleman right here was a fighter combat pilot in World War II in Korea. The United States Marine Corps is at World War I levels. The United States Navy is at 1917 levels now. Let me give you the comparative analysis. During the Reagan administration, we had 575 naval warships. Today we have 283. The goal is to take them down to 230. Now the left may believe that the oceans are rising, but they damn sure ain't shrinking. But this is how bad it is for our Navy. The current carrier battle group that we have in the Persian Gulf is due to rotate out. We don't have a replacement carrier battle group. Who is going to replace our carrier battle group in the Persian Gulf? The French. This is how dire this situation has gotten. The United States Air Force is the smallest and oldest fleet of the Air Force since we separated them away from the Army Air Corps. That's what the enemy sees. The enemy sees a country that is recalcitrant to admit who they are. The enemy sees a country that is decimating its military capability and capacity. The enemy sees a leadership that could not even honor and respect our men and women that had to be forced into lowering the flags at half-mast just yesterday. This is an incredible message that we're sending, not just across this country, but across the free world. When you think about Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel, they don't know where to turn. Because if the United States of America is not there as their solid ally, then they're on an island by themselves. And remember, this is the Obama administration that threatened to cut off Hellfire missile support to the IDF during the last conflagration against Hamas. This is how crazy and upside down the world has become. This is the world that Benjamin Netanyahu has to live in. And just this past weekend, the Iranians, if you did not see, they were saying that nothing changes in their relationship with the United States of America. And they will continue to see us as a threat. They will continue to see us as a country that has to be trampled upon. They continue to shout death to America at their Friday prayers. Now, the President of the United States of America may say that's just political spin and hyperbole. I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. If someone came up to me and said death to Allen West, I was going to lay him out. But if we don't have that type of mentality, if we don't have the type of exceptionalism and leadership that could stand at the Brandenburg gates and say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and the wall came tumbling down, then the clock is ticking for the free world. The clock is ticking for America, the clock is ticking for Israel, the clock is ticking all across this great globe. That's why you're here. That's why we have to fight. That's why we must win this ideological political fight here in the United States of America in order to save the future of freedom and liberty and democracy for the world. So with that being said, what are your questions? I will tell you that, you know, the military always teaches you to look at trends, look at a person's actions, not so much their words. When President Obama removed the bust of Winston Churchill from the Oval Office in the first month that he was there, that was an indicator. In March, April, I believe, when he traveled to give that speech at Cairo University, and he sat the Muslim Brotherhood members at the front and center, that was another indicator. President Obama does not care for the strength of the United States of America. He believes that we should be just like anyone else. And remember, when he was asked that question, he said he believes in, you know, Irish exceptionalism, just like French or, you know, whoever exceptionalism. Except for one thing, most people are not trying to get into Ireland or any of these other countries. Everyone seems to want to try to come here. There is an animus within the president that is not logical. I can't explain it. He would have to explain that to you. But I am very concerned in that it's almost pathological, a person that can lie to you and know that they're not telling you the truth, but they're trying to convince you to believe in them and believe in something that is not good for you. That's shades of Stalin, that's shades of Chairman Mao, that's shades of Fidel Castro. I mean, all of these people who also use words like hope and change. Okay, so that's, I can't explain it, but I will tell you this, this is a very dangerous time. And we cannot be afraid to say the things that need to be said, you know, for fear of being called a racist or whatever. But the thing is that if you're right, you have to say it. You have to talk about the policies. These policies are not beneficial to the United States of America, definitely not these foreign and national security policies. She's picking.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
Sort of.
Ambassador Bolton is a much smarter guy than I am. And again, it is not whether or not he's an ambassador or an agent of Iran. I just believe that the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, has a belief system that is antithetical to that of this constitutional republic. You know, when I look at, you know, I was there in Iraq in 2003. We had defeated Al-Qaeda in Iraq. There's no doubt about it. You can go back and look at their intelligence communications, and they will tell you that they have been defeated. But to make a national security foreign policy decision based upon campaign promises opened up the Middle East to where we are. I mean, he gave rise to this thing called the Islamic State. Now, some people will say that's naivete. I will tell you that I think it's more so purposeful. I am very concerned about the people that are within that inner circle. I'm very concerned about the background and the history of one Valerie Jarrett, who I see as our modern day Rasputin. And history will eventually tell us about what happened in the White House. But you cannot discount these decisions that have been made, you know, as just happenstance. We all know that 4 Americans were abandoned to die in Libya. It had nothing to do with the video. So who's accountable for that? We now see that what we were doing in Libya was that, you know, we supported Islamist forces. You know, Muammar Gaddafi was not the greatest of guys, but, you know, there are tapes that Muammar Gaddafi's son said, hey, look, we're happy to transition, to get out of here and, you know, have a stable and secure Libya. Who made the decision that we had to outsource our military capacity and capability to Islamist forces in Libya. And look at what you have now. Why is it that we are not supporting President el-Sisi in Egypt, who is fighting a two-front battle between the Islamists in Libya and now the Islamist forces that Mohammed Morsi brought into the Sinai, which also threatened, Israel from the south. And so all of these things are out there. I don't care about where he was born. I don't care about where he's a Muslim now. All I know is this: the decisions that this president is making and has made are horrific and borderline traitorous in some instances. The thing is, I believe that more so focus on Democrat senators and representatives, because they're the ones where the pressure will be put upon. And you have to tell them that you may think that you are safe and secure in your political seat. We will find a way to remove you.
We'll primary Schumer with another Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. I mean, you're not going to get a Republican to win a Senate race here in the state of New York, or probably, in Steve Israel's congressional district. But every single person needs to understand the gravity and the seriousness of the vote for this Iranian agreement. This is not about a historical moment for the president. This is not about an exhibit that will go into his library. And as a matter of fact, when the president stands up and says that I have done something that no one else has done, well, there's a reason why we don't walk around and put our hands in fire, because it's a really dumb thing to do. Okay. So having the Cubans have an embassy that is opening up in Washington, that's not a really smart thing to do. Even though you say that you did it and no one else has, well, there's a reason why. But for Iran to become an economic, military, and nuclear power within the next 15 years, that's what this agreement says. It cannot be debated whatsoever. This is not a smart thing, and history has evidenced that. And so these people that believe that they are safe, you need to let them know that you're not. And I guarantee you, there are Democrats out there. They probably won't say it in public, but they don't want to see this happen, because they're shaking in their boots as well. I gotta go to the Marine Combat Battle. Semper Fi. What you are talking about is the basic philosophy and mantra of Ronald Reagan, which was peace through strength. And that is a deterrent mindset. And when you don't have that philosophy, that deterrent mindset, when you believe that it is about compromise, negotiating, agreements, you can't have an agreement with despots, dictators, theocrats, and autocrats. They don't understand that. They don't get that. They are people that understand action. It's just the same as when you're in Afghanistan and you're sitting there with a bunch of tribal elders. The only thing they want to know is, are you the tough guy? Are you the guy that's going to stop the Taliban, stop insurgencies, what have you? So you're correct. When Israel has taken actions in the past, to include Syria, you didn't mention that, you didn't hear a peep out of those countries ever again. But when you give them the chance to become emboldened, they just build it up. I mean, look at what the Ayatollah just recently said in Iran. He said, now is the time for the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim communities, to unite against Israel, because they feel emboldened. They feel that now is their time. And we can't allow that to happen. This is the most important thing going into the 2016 election cycle. The President of the United States, his key title is Commander-in-Chief. There are plenty of people here in New York City that I could get for economic advisors. There are people down in Texas to be energy advisors. There's smart doctors out there that could advise on health care. But only one person sits down at the table with really bad people, and they ought to convince them that the United States of America is strong. That's what I need you to look through. That should be your prism as you evaluate. I think we're at 16 now. The 16 different individuals. There's no way in the Sam Hill that anyone from the Democrat Party should be president of the United States of America, because they're just going to continue on what we have seen just recently. But we need to raise someone up that will restore this country, restore its economic strength, restore our energy security, restore our national security, and as you said, have us respected and have us feared on the stage of international relations. That has not happened. When we, as a country, I didn't vote for him, but we as a country re-elected President Obama, we sent a message to the world. We sent a message to all the bad guys. You got 4 years, and clock's ticking. The things that we have seen happen in the last 2.5 years are really, it's amazing how fast these people are moving. And I don't want to see us get to a point where it could be a point of no return. Our men and women in the United States military are chomping at the bit to take the fight to these guys. Alexander the Great had a famous quote, and I love to share. He said that I would not fear an army of lions if they were to be led by lambs, but I would fear an army of lambs if they were to be led by a lion.
Yeah.
Think about where we are today. Yeah, you're talking about a fait accompli because of what the United Nations did, because you're not going to be able to bring that back. And one thing that Sarah didn't mention, but you know, when you continue to hear people talk about this snapback sanctions, there's no such thing. As a matter of fact, the process for the snapback sanctions is a committee. And who is part of that committee? Iran. So, I mean, why don't you just invite the wolf to a chicken dinner and you're a chicken, okay? And so this is insane. This is about economics for the Europeans. And, you know, China and Russia are looking for a new energy market. So it is going to be god-awful hard to bring this back from a global perspective. So the United States of America is going to have to stand alone with Israel against this threat. But I will tell you, you have people like Saudi Arabia, you have the United Arab Emirates, you have Egypt, you have the Kurds that are willing to stand up and make this fight. But who's the leader? That's what's missing. And so I will tell you that this is going to be a very dark 17 to 18 months. I have to be honest. Now, can we survive this? Yes. Can we survive another 4 years of something like this? No. And that's why a lot of people say that, you know, this is the most critical election in the history. This is. This really is when you think about the moment that we are in. So I'm not saying that we dial it in, but I'm saying that a good leader starts to look ahead into the future and plans the battles that they can win, because as long as the president is sitting in the White House right now, I don't know if we're going to be able to reverse this thing, because he was very shrewd with Samantha Power in going to the UN on Monday. And Monday was the day that kicked off the 60 days for the House and Senate. So now he put the choo-choo train, you know, ahead of it. But what you really need to talk about is how do you keep America safe and secure? And that's going to be the important crux. We are going to have to look at someone that can say, as Churchill did, you know, never surrender. Never, never, ever surrender. You know, it's so funny how, you know, in the lead up to World War II, everyone attacked Churchill. Everyone thought Churchill was a nut. Everyone thought Churchill was a warmonger. But who does history remember? Who's the only person that's not an American that has a Navy warship named after him? Winston Churchill. But this is what you have to, you know, in Egypt, you have someone that is a strong part by his actions. And if you go back and look at the speech that he gave to Islamic clerics and scholars in January, I mean, he told them, stop this crap. You guys are the ones proselytizing and making it happen. In Jordan, you know, we've got another good ally with King Abdullah. In the UAE, I will tell you, in Afghanistan, some of the toughest special operators were the UAE special operators operating down in southern Afghanistan. You know, because for them, they don't want their economy to be messed with. I mean, Dubai is pretty happy. Abu Dhabi is pretty happy what they got going on. Qatar, forget it. Qatar, you know, that's the home of the head of Hamas. I just forgot his name. Al Jazeera is there, so I would cut her out. Turkey, I'm still on the fence on, because I don't know what Erdogan is, long ball, and also their Islamist move. The Kurds, so pro-Western, pro-Israel. They're just waiting for us. It's the world's largest ethnic minority without a homeland. If you were to tell the Kurds, we'll guarantee you a homeland, game over. They'll take care of all those chuckle brains over there. Now, but the thing that is missing is a leading entity. I mean, I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I remember I was in the 1st Infantry Division. I remember seeing Syrian tanks and Egyptian tanks, because there was leadership, there was focus. I mean, and that is what we are lacking. Iran right now is a grave threat to that region. You see what they are doing influencing Baghdad. You see what they're doing in Sana'a, Yemen. You see what they're doing in Beirut. You see what they're doing in Damascus, Syria. This is not a hard thing for us to bring together a coalition, but no one trusts the United States of America. When the Saudis went and bombed the Houthis in Yemen, they only gave the United States Central Command 2 hours notice. Just 2 hours notice. When the president said he wanted to have this summit with all the GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council leaders, all 6 of them, how many showed up? 2. One of them said, I'd rather go to the horse race with the Queen of Elizabeth. They don't have time for photo ops. They don't have time for, rhetoric and all of this. So that is what is missing. An America that will step up and take a leadership role. And I will tell you, speaking to folks, back channel in Egypt, they really believe that the President of the United States of America is batting for the Muslim Brotherhood. And now they believe he's batting for, Iran as well. And it's very perplexing to them. They cannot put a finger on this, but they know they don't trust it. Now, let's go, hopefully that answered the first question in a way. I mean, and just the same, there are countries like the Baltic states, Poland and others that want to stand up, but they need leadership against Russia. There are countries that are looking for leadership to stand up against China as well. I mean, Thailand was just forced into buying 3 Chinese submarines. Why the hell does Thailand need submarines? But the Chinese told them, you'll buy them, and they did. The Senkaku Islands, they've threatened Japanese territory. Japan now is looking at changing its constitution from a self-defense military force to a full military force. This is what is happening in a world where there is no leadership coming from 1600 Pennsylvania. Now, can Israel do what needs to be done? Absolutely. They have the capability, they have the capacity, but they don't have the long legs to be able to sustain what can happen after 24 to 48 hours. The bunker buster munitions, the United States has to release them. The intelligence support that is necessary, the United States has to work with them and collaborate. The aerial refueling capability and capacity, that's the United States. And see, strategically, I mean, when I visited with Benjamin Netanyahu in August of 2011, he said one very simple thing. And he looked at me because he knew I would understand. He's a paratrooper, I was a paratrooper. He said, do not zero out your forces in Iraq. If you do, you will create a vacuum, and that vacuum will be filled. He said that in August of 2011 during a congressional visit that we had there with him. And look what has happened. But even more so, from a strategic perspective, we could have given some overflight corridors to Israel. Jordan would have been happy to do it. But that's shut off now. So that's where we missed a window. And that's where Israel needs the United States of America to support. And when you have a president that sends over campaign operatives to undermine your election, you don't have that trust. So that's why I'm saying these next 17 to 18 months are critical. And folks, let me tell you something. When those billions of dollars start flowing back to Iran, Hamas is going to get their cut. Those tunnels are going to get rebuilt. They're going to be absolutely Hezbollah too. And guarantee you that if they get told turn and go against Israel, they'll pivot on a dime. The S-300 is the most sophisticated anti-aircraft system out there. If don't quote me on this because I was a ground pounder, but I think I'm in the neighborhood. One S-300 radar system can track somewhere between 500 to 600 aircraft. Now, to put that in perspective, I think it was over the 4th of July, we ran 16 airstrikes against ISIS. Those guys would be sitting ducks. Russia is happy to sell that S-300 system. And they'll find a way to do it under the guise of, trade or economic exchange, something. They'll find a way to do it. And that's my big concern, is that it won't have to go until year 5 when the UN weapons embargo, conventional weapons are supposed to be lifted. They'll find a way to make that happen before then. It's very simple. I have 2 daughters, 22 and 18. I have to be the adult. I have to be the parent. I have to tell the story about America and America's greatness. You know, Diana West, no relation, wrote a great book called Death of the Grown-Up. You should pick that book up because it talks exactly to what you are articulating. We have adults that don't want to be adults. We have parents that are not taking responsibility in their home. You know, I will tell you that my wife, who is an immigrant from Jamaica, legal immigrant, her father served 22 years in the United States Army. One of her nieces came into our house in South Florida with a Che Guevara t-shirt. She was marched right upstairs and told to take it off and leave the house. Because my wife, well, she is kind of like a mom. Freudian slip there. She explained to her who Che Guevara was. See, we don't explain to our kids what is going on. You know, we don't sit down at the dinner tables anymore like my parents did with me, and I had to talk to them about 2 stories from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's your home. Be in charge in your home. You know, I will never forget my daughter who has graduated college. She's going for a master's program at SMU. She had an internship job at an eye clinic down in South Florida. And she in her mind had planned out, based upon what she was supposed to get paid, her budget. Then all of a sudden she got that first paycheck and she got that first statement and she was introduced to Mr. FICA. And she asked me, you know, what was this? What does this mean? And I told her that you are now paying taxes for all of these different types of things. And you know, my daughter said, I'm going full-time in college. I'm doing this job. Why can't they get out and do the same that I'm fighting to do? But if you don't have that conversation, you don't raise your kids right, then guess who they listen to? They listen to the Kardashians. They listen to the people at their schools. And it has to be a constant communication. You can't just stop it. So my challenge is to each and every one of you, be the adult, be the parent, and when your children or your grandchildren's friends come into the house, I'm a benevolent dictator, and they all know that. And you can call up my daughters right now, and they'll tell you that a lot of their friends are afraid of Colonel West. But as my dad taught me, fear is a motivator. So we have to be the adults, and we cannot allow others to not educate, but indoctrinate our children. Oh no, they've been cheating. I mean, that's what I'm saying. And, you know, they're celebrating this agreement, and it is going to free them. Now, I will tell you that the Pakistanis and the Saudis are talking because it's still that Sunni alliance, and so the arms race has already started in the Middle East. There's no doubt about it. Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that because I think, let me make sure I get it right. We love death more than they love life. Some along those lines, the Islamic mentality. And we're seen as a weak horse. Look, let me tell you what the 21st century battlefield has to be about. It's not about nation building. When you find the enemy, wherever he's trying to have sanctuary, you go out there and you kill him. We don't have people to talk about victory. We don't have people to talk about killing the enemy. We cannot get bogged down worrying about building schools, building roads, or whatever. You know, that's not the nature of this battlefield. The nature of this battlefield is if you invite the bad guy into your territory, we're not going to ask permission. We're going to come and we're going to schwack him. And if he comes back, we will come back. And that's the level of, I just hate to say it, it's the medieval mentality that they understand. You have to crush me in order to get me to respect you. This is not about, you know, we will open our hand if you unclench your fist or whatever the president said toward Iran back in 2009. That's insidious, okay? So, you know, this is not about being brutal, but it's about being forthright. And with all the sophistication and the weaponry that we have, and we're not willing to use it, they see that as just, it's disgusting to them. Because if they had those things, Katie barred the door. This is the most important thing that we must come to realize. We have to talk to the common, everyday American. Okay? We cannot go down and talk to them about quantitative easing. They don't get it, okay? All they want to know is, can I take care of my family? Can I work? Can I put gas in my car? Can I go have a vacation? And that's it. How can I make sure I have better opportunity? And one of the biggest things about having a better opportunity is being safe. And when you see an administration that has allowed countless upon countless terrorist attacks in the United States of America, and still to this day, Fort Hood is called workplace violence. You know, this recruiting center and reserve center that was attacked last week, Thursday, this first happened in June of 2009 in Little Rock, Arkansas, when a young African-American male by the name of Carlos Bledsoe, converted to Islam, traveled to Somalia and Yemen, came back and shot 2 soldiers at that Little Rock, Arkansas recruiting station, killing one, wounding the other. That should have been the end of that right then. We did not have to go another 6 years to the point where we still have recruiting stations and we still have reserve component centers that are unprotected. So this is starting to hit home. And we've got a great opportunity to talk about, do we want to live in a safe and secure America, or do we want to live in fear? Let me tell you about optimism. When those few men stood at Lexington Green and they lost their lives, they had optimism. When those men stood at Concord Bridge, when those men stood at Bunker Hill, they had optimism. When Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain stood at Little Round Top at Gettysburg, he was out of ammunition, casualties were rising, and the 20th Alabamans kept coming up that hill. He had optimism. He said, fix bayonets. When the Marines in Belleau Wood, they had optimism. That's why the Germans called them devil dogs, a title that stays till today. When at Bastogne, in December of 1944, an entire Army division was surrounded by the Germans. They were asked to surrender. General McAuliffe had optimism and replied by saying nuts. At Chosin Reservoir, when an entire Army and Marine Corps was surrounded by the Chinese, the frozen Chosin, and General O.P. Smith had optimism. He said, yeah, we're surrounded. We can attack them in every direction. When General Hal Moore in the Idrang Valley was dropped in, odds 5-1 against him, you saw the movie, We Were Soldiers. He had optimism. That's who we are. We have accomplished something in this country in 231 years that is an incredible miracle because we had optimism. Now, if all of a sudden we believe that the great opportunity society, this great experiment in liberty, freedom, and democracy that we just celebrated 239 years of having not too long ago is over, then you are letting down those men who took the battlefield of Lexington Green. We have optimism because we're Americans. And I don't give a dadgum who the other side brings out. If we just talk to the American people about greatness, just the same as Ronald Reagan won 49 out of 50 states in his re-election against Mondale, we can kick the crap out of the other side. But the problem is that we have too many people that are afraid to stand up and talk about what it means to be an American.
Here, here.